Well, good evening. We have two documentaries this evening. Both are in the life and times category of the subject. We're dealing first with Fats Waller. A lot of it is self-explanatory. It just explains Fats's life, his joy of life, and things that perhaps he failed to do. There's some interesting observations on stride piano from Stanley Price and various other people in it. So I think the best thing we can do is get a sense of the time, stride piano, the Harlem scene, the recording scene, and what difficulties African American musicians faced at the time. So this is Fats Waller. This joint is Jumpin', a documentary from 1985.
Do me a favor, marry me. Do me a favor, can't you see? I'm on the favor to be Middle Island you. Oh, do me a favor, share my lot. Do me a favor, tie the knot. Darling, the waiver and we'll come smiling through. Say the word, dear, we do as other folks do, raise two or three. It's absurd, dear, that I should have to coax you. Don't be afraid to take a chance with me. Oh, you won't regret it when we're one. Oh, baby, we'll have fun. I won't forget it, so do me a favor, dear. Yes, yes, yes. Listen, honey, have you got $1.90? Well, I got to die. I'm going out here and find a deposit. Yes, my.
The first time he ever got a $100 bill, Al Capone gave it to him. Now, it's a funny thing how that happened. My father was playing in Chicago. Al Capone lived in a suburb of Chicago called Joliet, Illinois. And he was playing in the show one night at the Sherman Hotel, Hotel Sherman in Chicago. And one night they pulled up in a car, and the guys come in and told him, said, "Come on, Fats, we want to take you somewhere." He said, "What?" And they pulled a gun on him and told him, "Come on." So my father was trying to think, well, what the hell, whose wife am I going out with now that somebody's going to do this to me, right? He didn't know what the hell the problem was, right? So they took him on, blindfolded him, and took him to some place, took the blindfold off, sat him down, and Al Capone said, "Come on, play for us, Fats." And whatever they asked him to play a tune, they stuck $100 in his pocket. And my father, when he left out of there, they kept him a day and a half. When he left out of there, all his pockets were full of $100 bills.
Got my fingers crossed. Not that I'm superstitious, I'm afraid it's too good to be true. Got my fingers crossed. No wonder I'm suspicious. I'm so gay and skies are much too blue. Blue, don't want no trouble with old man Trouble. That goes double, yes, on account of because of love, yes. Got my fingers crossed. This really is so delicious. I'm afraid it's too good to be true. Yes, yes, swing it on out there, jazz. What I say, yeah. Oh, my. Well, all right.
In the jazz age, from say 1922, the music was actually created for dancing because everybody, the world was dance crazy then everywhere. The gangsters ran all the night business. I mean, like they were bootlegging, and they used the nightclubs to, to sell their wares, and they opened up nightclubs all over the country and had bands and chorus girls and things in order to sell the whiskey. And then also what made the music business was dance halls. They had dance halls. Every little town you could go to had a pavilion, a dance pavilion, and they'd have a house band of local musicians working there.
My father started, when he was a little boy, well, his father was a deacon in the Abyssinia Baptist Church in Harlem. My father used to come into the church, and Adam Clayton Powell Sr. used to pump the organ for him. My father would sneak in and play jazz. And he also used to play in the church. He used to play religious music in there. But I remember my father telling me that his father whipped him a couple of times for playing jazz on the organ in the Abyssinia Baptist Church. But even back then, my father had a lot of cronies and friends in Harlem that they could see that he had a talent when he was very young. He was 13, 12, or 11. He was playing the piano and organ. And he played religious music. He used to get all the music that he could get a hold of and play it. He'd play Scott Joplin, he'd play classical music, anything he could read or learn from, he'd sit down and play. And he used to play, when he was a kid, he used to play 8, 9 hours a day. And he'd sneak out and go into the clubs where the guys were playing, or the after-hour places. He'd get out of his bed 2 o'clock in the morning, and sneak out the house, right, and go to these clubs and sit down and play and practice and play and watch the guys playing piano. James P. Johnson, Lucky Roberts, they all took him under his wing. Willie the Lion Smith got my father the first long pants he had, because James P. once brought my father to Willie Lion Smith and said, let him sit down and play. And Willie Lion Smith, not with them knickers, he's not going to sit down and play. So let's go get him a pair of pants. And then right after that, when Willie the Lion heard my father play, he fell in love with him right away. And that started his career, right in New York.
Did you hear what the lady said?
Not exactly. What did you say?
She said, I got a snap in my finger.
Yeah.
And a rhythm in my walk.
You don't tell me.
As the elephant said, living in a great big way.
Oh, get away from here. That's too much.
I got a handful of nothing.
What?
But I peep at it like a hawk.
Peep at nothing?
I'm doing okay, living in a great big way.
Tell me more, tell me more.
Listen here, son. I'm the salt in the ocean. I'm the sun in the sky. I'm a Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Dr. President.
I'm $1 million, long as I got snap in my finger.
Oh, stop.
And a rhythm in my walk.
Get away from here.
I got the devil to pay. I'm living in a great big way.
Well, let me tell you something.
What is it?
Gotta snap my finger.
Yeah, yeah.
Rhythm in my mouth.
Dog,
Doing okay. Living in a great big way. Got a handful of nothing.
Wait here.
Watching like a hawk.
No, you didn't.
As the elephants say, I'm living in a gigantic, colossal way.
Tell me some more.
I'm salt in the ocean. I'm that sun up in the sky. I'm a Franklin D. Roosevelt. I've $1 million as long as I retain that snap in the fingers and the rhythm in the walk. Oh, there. Doing okay. I'm living in a great big way.
In the 20s and 30s, they had what we call house rent parties. And usually to throw the police off, they would call them joints. And Fats Waller and Andrew Zoff got together and did a thing called This Joint is Jumpin', and here it is. This joint is jumping, ready jumping. Come in, cats, and check your hats. I mean, this joint is jumping.
And that's how stride piano became popular, because they just used one piano player in a party, and stride piano was so powerful that bombs could go off in the room and you could still hear the piano. I mean, you could dance, yell, scream, kick down doors, whistle, anything you want, and you could still hear that piano playing.
My, oh, yes, yes. My, they have a new expression, long old Harlem way, that tells you when a party is 10 times more than gay. To say that things are jumping leaves not a single doubt. Watch all these cats, watch everything when you hear somebody shout. This joint is jumping, really jumping. Come in, cats, and check your hats. I mean, this joint is jumping. Piano's pumping, dancers are bumping. Every Moses on his toes, in fact, the joint is jumping. Check your weapons at the door, just pay a quarter. Burn your leather around the floor, grab anybody's daughter. The roof is rocking.
Red parties was always after-hour kind of things, where that sporting fellas, you know, gamblers, and they had poker and craps and all that, and sold whiskey and stuff. First of all, you had to be a certain age. If you wasn't, you could tell a good lie or look like you were older to get into them. But once you get in there, drink a whiskey with 50 cents, and you could eat a dinner for 75 cents. And usually, it was owned by a landlady.
It's really jumping.
I know it.
Come in, cats, and check your hats. I mean, this joint is jumping. Piano's thumping, dancers are bumping. Every Moses on his toes. In fact, the joint is jumping.
Tell 'em about it.
Check your weapons at the door. Now be sure and pay your quarter.
That's it, get the
Burn your
quarter.
leather on the floor, boy, and grab anybody's daughter.
Except
The
my
roof is
daughter.
rocking. The neighbors are knocking. We're all bummed when the wagon comes. I mean, this joint is jumping.
Turn it loose.
Come on, put your friend. Give me the pony.
Get your big feet binging, there's plenty in the kitchen. What is that? They just walked in. Just look at the way it's switching. Oh, mercy. Don't mind now, cause I'm in power. I got bail if we go to jail. I mean, this joint is jumping. Yeah. Oh, don't ever give your right name. No, no. Don't ever do that. I mean, this joint is jumping. Yeah.
It was the swinging of the left hand that designated as being stride piano. It was practically taking the part that a bass violin now takes in other orchestrations, because stride piano players usually were playing without bass violins or anything in those days.
Other guys, when they play the bass, when they stride, they play the bass, they play a single note in the bass, you know, and then accompanied with a chord on top. Well, Fats used to have a chord on both places, but only the lower chord would be a tenth with the other notes in between with the other fingers, and he would then play the chord on top. Now, Teddy Wilson and Earl Hines would play a tenth, but they didn't put the middle notes in and play the chord on top. With the stride piano I'm talking about. But guys played that according to their physical ability to reach a tenth. But Fats reached it easily, and that's why he was able to apply other notes in the middle of it. And then there's a story about Earl Hines that he had the web cut in his left hand in order to stretch his hand out, the web between his thumb and his first finger. And then I heard another piano player that had an extension put on his little finger so he could reach a flat tenth.
They did consider him the epitome of stride piano playing. And he was king of the stride. Now, a lot of people, they don't realize that my father's biggest thing that made him a real professional, that paid him the money, was not the fact that he could play stride piano, but it was the fact that he had a personality. So that when my father took songs like, I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter, I remember distinctly that Victor asked him to record that song. They went to everybody else and they turned it down. And my father said, okay, I'll record it, and he made a hit out of it. But it's the way that he sang the song that made the thing a hit.
I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. I'm gonna write words oh so sweet, they're gonna knock me off my feet. A lot of kisses on the bottom, I'll be glad I got 'em. I'm gonna smile and say, I hope you're feeling better. And close with love the way you do. I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you.
The best writer my father ever had, lyricist that ever wrote with him, was Andy Razaf. Razaf was a short form of his name. His name was Razaf Fikio. His grandmother or grandfather was a royalty in Madagascar. And he was a very learned man, and he had a good grasp of the English language, and he could really put lyrics together because he was good at poetry.
Andy recognized his talent and made friends with him and encouraged him. I think really that Andy was probably mainly responsible for taking Fats downtown and organizing him his finances to the extent that he would really get some real money and royalties for his songs rather than just peddle them for drinks and pocket money, or drinking funds, as we would say.
When they were going to do something, he said, Fats, I want you to be here at 10. Now, don't come in here at 1 o'clock talking about you got stuck on the bridge or something like that. Just come over here at 10. And he wouldn't let my father get away with coming in at 12 or 1 when he was supposed to be there at 10. Consequently, they got a lot of work done.
Fats was such a great composer that he felt he could put the phone book to music. And he was also a very talented lyricist, as U.B. Blake often said. So they were really a wonderful team. The only problem, Andy was really very serious about his ambition to get things done and written and all. And Fats was so happy-go-lucky, he didn't really want to be tied down too long.
Guess you know he wrote Honeysuckle Rose, and I think the verse to Honeysuckle Rose is one of the premier verses ever written about a song. I mean, the way that Andy hooked these lyrics up to Honeysuckle Rose was fantastic.
Look at these fine, delicious dinners out here this afternoon. The gas ain't there. Why, you lovely thing, where have you been all my life? Say, do you think I can take the keys for one of you girls there? Huh? What you say? Well, all right then, baby. I'm with you 100%. I mean, I want to tell you something. Every honeybee feels jealousy when they see you out with me. Don't blame them, goodness knows. Honeysuckle Rose. When you pass my flowers through the eye, and I know the reason why. You're much sweeter, goodness knows. Honeysuckle Rose. I don't buy sugar. You just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar. So sweet when you stir it up when I'm taking those sips from your lips. Does the honey drip? Mercy. Confection? Goodness knows. You my honeysuckle rose, yeah. me. Don't blame him, goodness knows, honeysuckle rose. When you pass my blossom side, know the reason why. You must sweeter, goodness knows, honeysuckle rose. I don't buy sugar, you just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar, so sweet when you stir it up. When I'm taking those sips from your lips, those honey drips, confection, goodness knows, honeysuckle rose.
It took my brother and I a long time to wake up that he would tell us, we're going by to see a cousin, but don't tell your mother that you're going to see this cousin. And how my brother and I got wise to who his girlfriends were is he always bought them a piano, so that when he went in their house, he'd play the piano. And he'd nudge my brother and I and say, now, don't tell your mama I brought you over to see your cousin. And there'd be some chick there, right? He'd be going place to place. And my brother said, here's another one. I said, hey, Ronald, here's another one. He said, yeah, I see. I don't like her. We'd say, I like the other one better, you know what I mean? We just talking about. They all treated us nice. I mean, my father thought he was getting over, but we knew what was going on, you know. And my mother did too. Half the time, my mother used to go on the road with him to try to keep him halfway straight, but, you know, it's hard. You know, when women are constantly throwing themselves at you, it's kind of hard to back off on everyone, you know.
I never knew him to be, I mean, I think I took for granted that he was a womanizer and that there were girls always hanging over the piano when he was in nightclubs. But he was never one to, he was not an exhibitionist, you know, about his sexism. He was quite the gentleman as I saw him always.
Harlem was a cultural center for Black America after World War I, and indeed it was becoming that before World War I. But after World War I, there was an enormous migration of blacks into Harlem. With this new infusion, particularly as far as popular music, jazz, was concerned, a lot of different kinds of music was being heard. This includes blues as well as the more sophisticated kinds of jazz that would be represented by something like ragtime.
It don't mean a thing, you ain't got that swing. Don't mean a thing, all you got to do is swing. Makes no difference if it's sweet or hard. Give that rhythm everything you got, pretty mama. Don't mean a thing, you ain't got that swing.
We always lived in Harlem until we moved out to Long Island. I mean, we kept an apartment in Harlem somewhere. We either lived on, I was born on 133rd Street, Lenox Avenue. That's right, smack dab in the middle of Harlem.
I was in Baltimore with McKinney's Cotton Pickers when Cab came through there with his band. He had 3 saxophones, and he added me on as a 4th saxophone and brought me to New York. And they used to take me up to the Cotton Club. Let's see, I think Duke was playing there. And the show was so fabulous with the girls and all, it just upset me, you know, to see all of this, because where I came from, out west, we have never seen anything like that. If they had a nightclub, maybe they had 2 or 3 girls or 4 girls, but the Cotton Club had about 24 girls. They had 12 dancing girls, and then they had 12 what you call posing girls that walked around, you know, big girls. And they were all very beautiful girls. Harlem ran 24 hours a day. I mean, the Cotton Club would close at 4. Cotton Club and Connie's Inn and Smalls and those places would close at 4. Then everybody would go to the bars and hang out.
They give you a gold key. That was like a privilege to have one. And you show the gold key to the man at the door, and he say, "Oh, come right in." You go in after our place, 4 o'clock in the morning. You stay in there till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, we just go around the clock, 24 hours a day. So there was always something going on. And the only time, a lot of people didn't want to go to bed because they're afraid they're going to miss something. You know what I mean?
Way up in Harlem at a table for two. There was 4 of us, me, your big feet, and you. From your ankles up, you show our knees. Yes. But from that down's exactly too much feet. Yes, your feet's too big. Can't stand you 'cause your feet's too big. Say I can't tolerate you 'cause your feet's too big. Join in choir. Twice, sweet water. How's that for a vocal? Ain't it a killer? Where'd you get 'em? Your gal, she loves you. She thinks you're nice. She claims you got everything to take you to paradise. Ain't that a killer? She likes your loving. She likes your ring. But man, oh man, them things is too big. Yes, your feet's too big. Can't stand you 'cause your feet's too big. Say I can't tolerate you, nay, 'cause your feet's too big. Cedric, on your feet and earn your salary, son, blow. Play that doghouse music, I love it. That's it, give me the growl. Say your pedal extremities are colossal, but to me you ain't nothing but an old fossil. Yes, you got me walking, talking, and squawking, 'cause your feet's too big. Yes, your feet's too big. Can't stand you 'cause your feet's too big. Say I can't tolerate you, I really hate you, 'cause your feet's too big. In fact, your pedal extremities are a bit obnoxious. Where did you get them, son? Where did you get them? One never knows, do one. I've got my fingers crossed. Not that I'm superstitious. I'm afraid it's too good to be true. Look at there, look at there, look at there. I've got my fingers crossed. No wonder I'm suspicious. I'm so gay and skies are much too blue. What I say, what I say, what I say. Yes. No.
Every time I ever went with my father on the road in the summer, it was one big party. I mean, my father, just one party after another. There was no, when my father was in a show, like for instance, he played at the Royal Theater in Baltimore. These were the theater circuits, and they do 5 shows a day. They start doing the shows at 10 o'clock in the morning and don't stop till 2 o'clock at night. You go into my father's dressing room, there'd be 30 people deep in a room that would only hold 10 people comfortably. There'd be 30 people deep, bottles, drinking, hey, Fats doing this, so-and-so. He could hardly get in there himself. And he'd be like that all day long.
If I drink as much as him, I'd be dead, out. Because he could drink, he'd go to work, and when I first met him in Cincinnati, he'd go to work and take a gallon jug of whiskey, which was bootleg whiskey, and set it down by the piano. And by the time the night had gone, that bottle would be empty. And he would still be just like he never had a drink.
After 3 o'clock, we'd go into town to where a couple of the gangsters in town had a after-hour place They knew how to do business with the higher-ups uptown, and they were allowed to remain open. They served fried chicken, hot biscuits with honey, and whiskey, and sometimes gambling. And they had an open bar where you could get any kind of drink that you wanted after hours. So Fats would go down there, and we'd come in from work, and he'd go down there to, he ate quite a bit. He was a heavy eater, and we'd go in there, and the owners would be so glad to see Fats. Everything was on the house. They'd start bringing out them hot biscuits with the honey, and delicious fried chicken they had there. And they would always have a full bottle of liquid spirits at his disposal. And if he felt like playing, which he usually did after he had a couple of shots, he'd go up and entertain, and the gangsters were getting free entertainment, and he was having a whole lot of fun.
The gangsters were good. I remember Legs Diamond. I guess you've heard about him. He used to come by my house, give my brother and I $10 a piece. Just come in, here's $10 a piece for you. Joe Louis used to come by the house. He used to give my brother and I $10 a piece. Here's $10. Go ahead and buy yourself some candy. Tallulah Bankhead used to come by my house too. Movie stars, Humphrey Bogart. I mean, anybody would stop by my house 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and ring the bell and wouldn't hesitate. I mean, they just like, let's go buy Fats. And 3 o'clock in the morning and ring the doorbell. My old man said, come on in. They'd sit down and have a jam session. But all his life was like that. Our whole family life was like that. And when we moved out in St. Albans, my father had a Hammond organ, put it in the house. We used to have the neighbors coming over there at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. They just come in and they hear my father playing the organ and sit down. And he'd keep on playing. He loved to play. My father got the idea of Jitterbug Waltz from me playing Bach Inventions. That's one song that I can say that I had a direct bearing on my father writing. And that was originally the first jazz waltz ever written, Jitterbug Waltz. Half the songs he sold made $5 or $6 million. The half that he sold. And he's got credit in ASCAP for 450, but my old man wrote at least 900 or 1,000 tunes. And he was only 39 years old when he died. Andy Rizzoff and my father both were ripped off by the publishers. My father would sell a publisher a song and he'd give him $50 down, and then he wouldn't see any royalties for maybe a year and a half, and then when he get a check, it would be for $30 or $40. Now, the song would be hit on a hit parade, and my father would be getting $30 or $40. So what Andy and my father used to do, they used to go, there was a place in New York called, at 1619 Broadway, called the Brill Building, and most of the publishers in New York were in that building. So my father would write a song with Andy, and Andy would write about 6 or 8 sets of lyrics to the same song, and go into one publisher and sell it to them, go into another publisher with another set of lyrics and sell it to them, go into another publisher with another set of lyrics and sell it to them, and then when he got through selling it 5 or 6 times, he'd sit up and say, now you all battle out who owns the song. But he was constantly ripped off, so that's the way they off-balanced that rip-off. They used to do that. My father, for many a year, I mean, they were talking about taking him to court and whatnot for the same song, but they'd always settle it, you know, and them publishers knew they were ripping my old man off. My father was the type of person that if he had $50 in his pocket, he would spend it. And if he could borrow 50 from somebody, he would borrow 50 from him. Money meant nothing to him, just a means to an end. He didn't put away money for a rainy day. My father never had to worry about bank accounts because he didn't believe in them. What he did was just live from day to day, and he made a lot of money, but my father spent a lot of money. I mean, when the first Lincoln Continental Levy came out, my father bought one right away. As soon as he saw the car, he bought it right away. And you could come up to my father and give him a hard story, and if he had any money, he'd give it to you. Here's $10. Fats, I ain't ate in a week. Here's $10. Go get yourself something to eat. And he had a million friends, and nobody could ever harm my father. Any place he went, he had a lot of friends. My father believes in the 3 Bs, Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms. The first time that my father ever really got serious and walked out on the stage at Carnegie Hall, I mean, and he played, I mean, he was the epitome of a pianist playing jazz. And the thing was a flop. Because my father didn't sing, didn't joke. That hurt him in the worst way, because he was trying to be a serious musician. And when even doing a concert, somebody say, sing a song, Fats, you know what I mean? And he's trying to be serious. You know, he's got a real program all played out, and, you know, and it's all musical. And somebody yells in the audience, let me hear you sing, Fats. How about a little Ain't Misbehaving, right? There you go. Now, when I used to go to the Apollo Theater, my father used to wrap the curtain around him while he was singing. And he was a big man, 300 pounds, and he'd start doing a hula, and people would fall out. You know what I mean? He was just that type of person.
Well, we've all heard about musicians who can make a piano talk. Our guest this evening not only makes the piano talk, but he talks right back to the piano. And so, seated at the crockery box, ready to give out with Ain't Misbehaving and Handful of Keys, is the eminent composer virtuoso, that harmful little armful, Mr. Fats Waller. Yeah.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with while I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for you and you.
All the nightclubs and dance halls had a broadcast, a live broadcast in Chicago. Every hotel in Chicago had a band, and you could sit up all night listening to one band right after the other on the radio.
My father got a 15-minute show in Cincinnati. In fact, we moved to Cincinnati, and I lived in Cincinnati 9 months when my father had the show WWRL coming from Cincinnati. It was a 15-minute show, and the station in Cincinnati when my father had it was the most popular station in Ohio. And for that 15 minutes, people would turn in at night to listen to my father.
Ah, beat me, Daddy. Beat me, yes, I just ate the ball. Come on, you termite. Yeah.
It was a very popular show. In fact, they tried to get him to sign a contract for a half-an-hour show. But by that time, my father had bids to go on Hobby Lobby and the Charlie McCarthy show and the big shows here that were considered big shows.
Mr. Waller, you're a big fella, aren't you?
Wait a minute, wait, hold everything.
Kind of round.
I'm not fat now. Oh. Wait a minute. I just come in the large economy size.
Oh. Yeah. Would you mind turning around a minute?
Turning around? What for?
I just want to see how the other half lives.
It pulled him out of another category, and he went from like that jazz to that stride piano into what you would call a headliner. And he stopped doing little things, and he started doing big things. Then he went into pictures. He did a picture with Lena Horne and Bill Robinson called Stormy Weather, which was a showcase for all black people at the time.
No one to talk with, all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving my love for for you, for you, for you, for you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Hey, misbehaving, saving my love for you.
When my father first played in pictures, they wanted him to be a shoeshine boy, see, because he was black and he couldn't have any kind of stature, so they wanted him to be a shoeshine boy. My father said he would not play a shoeshine boy. He didn't give a damn what they did, right? And then he turned around and he said, well, how about an elevator boy? He said, okay, I'll play an elevator boy, but I will not play a shoeshine boy. So when I stopped to think about that, I said, he got them to give in just a little bit, but what's the difference between an elevator boy and a shoeshine boy? It's really not anything different, except that my father wasn't going to give that. He wasn't going to give all the way down.
Mr. Bolden, I'm the one that's sure delighted to see you back. Thanks, Ben. You're looking fine. I hate to bother you, boss, but I thought maybe you could find a spot for me in your new show. Well, you take a tip from me, Ben. Your spot's right here in this elevator. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
A lot of times I hear, especially black people, talk about why did those people in those days act like that? But that's the only way they could make it in pictures. I mean, they didn't have any money to make pictures. The white people had the money, so the black people had to go along. And the dues that they had to pay, Mantan Moore and all these old stars, they call them handkerchief heads and whatnot, but that's the only way they could get in. And once they got in, they tried to make it a little better. And today, it's altogether different, but it's people like my father and Mantan Moreland and Willie Best. Those guys are the guys that made it able for guys to do what they're doing today. So you got to pay your dues, you know what I mean?
Well, he just had a job. It was glad to have it because to be a token. I like to be a token now someplace because that's all you're going to ever get.
There were always places where black guys just couldn't work because they weren't accepted there. It's like in, you could take Chicago for an instant, even as far back as in the 40s and 50s. There were certain places downtown that never had a black entertainer or a musician in the inside of the doors. They just were not hired.
We all, most in those southern towns, stayed with private families because there was no hotels for us. And maybe they have one little, sometimes they'd have a little hotel, black hotel, own hotel, but most of us stayed in private families. Now with Cab Calloway, we had a train. We stayed on the Pullman. We used to go do all our one-nighters through the South on Pullman. With the Pullman, they'd pull the train into the town and sidetrack our car. We had a baggage car and a Pullman car, and we'd play the dance, come back and get on the train, and they'd pull us out the next day to the next town.
My father played what they call a Southern Circuit. When you went down to the South, they had a line down the middle, and the whites would be on one side, and the blacks would be on the other side. And they'd be listening to the same music, but they couldn't intermingle. I mean, that was one bad thing about all of that. And they would still intermingle, though, but they do it kind of slick, like, you know, wouldn't be out in public, you wouldn't do that. But my father didn't play the Southern Circuit too often. That's for that reason. That's the reason he didn't, because he didn't like it.
The next number is What Did I Do to Be So Black and Blue?
Black and Blue is an interesting song because it's unique in Waller's output in that its title is an obvious reference to the conditions that he and members of the black race found themselves living under. What did I do to be so black and blue? It's an enormously poignant refrain. He was not a Langston Hughes. He was not a Paul Robeson. We have, to my mind, no indications that he had a deep, profound commitment to exposing injustice. I think rather he preferred to satirize in a very delicate way, perhaps not always perceptible to white people, some of the foibles of their civilization, and preferred to laugh off the indignities that he had to suffer as a way of dealing with them rather than fighting them in an open kind of way. That may have been a matter of personality.
He could be hurting inside, but when he started to entertain, it would all go away, and he just entertained. He had that way of getting it across and entertaining, and then when he gets through entertaining, that hurt might come back again. But that's the only time he would know it, because while he was entertaining, you'd say, gee, he'd start laughing. The minute my father walks into a place, it would just light up, like Luna Park. I mean, it would light up. People would light up. Everybody, hey, Fats, listen, do so-and-so. And he'd start right off. And he loved that kind of atmosphere.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving all my love for you. You fine rascal, you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, saving all my love for you, just you. Like Jack Horner in a corner, don't go nowhere. What do I care? Your kisses, my dear, are worthwhile waiting for. Believe me, dear.
He was on a train and just kept going, that's all, till he died. And he'd be so tired, sometimes he'd lay in the bed for 3 days. Now, he'd been up 10 days. Maybe he'd get a cat nap here, cat nap there, drinking, eating sparsely. He lived in the fast lane. When he went to California, and on his way back, he died on a train. He dissipated a lot, drank a lot, rest broken. Takes a toll after a while. So he had so much talent based in him that I guess, you notice that people with a whole lot of talent, they don't usually live very long. They're here, they do their thing real quick and get out of here.
Sweet essence of pink buttermilk. Look what's going on here. Come out of there, you rascal, you. That's easy, isn't it, Johnson? Take me, darling, take me to heaven.
No one to talk with all by myself. No one to walk with, but I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, saving all my love for you.
You better save your confection for me.
I know for certain the one I love.
You do?
I'm I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my love for you.
Oh, pat me on my back and call me Shorty.
Like Jackie Horner in the corner, don't go nowhere.
The only thing that he had time for was partying and music. And basically, it all came from the music, because my father would only stop partying for the music, which meant that the music came first.
My love for you.
Come here so I can tell you something, baby. Like Jack Horner in a corner, don't go nowhere. I don't care. Your kiss is always waiting for. Believe me.
But I don't stay out late. I don't care.
That's fine.
I'm home about 8. Me and my radio.
Well, all right.
Ain't misbehaving. Saving my love for you.
I'm saving my love, baby. Saving all my love for you. Yeah.
And now, here it comes. That one and only composition, Honeysuckle Rose, by yours truly, Little Fatsy Watsy Walla. And here it is. Take it away, boys. We in the groove for it, Honeysuckle Rose.
And that's the end of the first documentary.
Okay.
Hello again, welcome back to part 2. And this again is another documentary which can be described as the life and times of a subject. It's drummer Stan Levy. Most of this is self-explanatory. You'll find some interesting contributions from a variety of luminaries, and also very interesting for me anyway, and I'm sure that you'll find it interesting, is extracts of a radio interview with Charlie Parker, which is often very rare these days. Stan Levy was very much involved in the bebop movement, and again, let's go to hear him, a very honest and decent guy, talking about his experiences. Stan Levy.
I think the most important thing that one must look at here is that the beginning of bebop. Many people said it, was birthed in New York City or the East Coast. And you got to look at the 1940s from a music perspective, looking at the music, African American music, a creation called bebop. And there was Stan Levy, who at the time was probably listening to and recording with some of the giants of the early innovation called bebop, with Miles, with Charlie Parker, and above all, with Dizzy Gillespie. When you look at some of the other drummers in the community at that time, guys like Roy Haynes, Max Roach, and Art Blakey, these people were major players in the movement. But you've also got to look at Stan Levy. Stan Levy made a major impact in terms of this music in New York City. When you look at Stan's background, it wasn't to be. So Stan had something unique going on in terms of his own concept of bebop, African American music, and the love of this music.
When I was just a kid, about 6 or 7, I always played with spoons and knives, and I had a rhythm, things, I just had to get that out. And I would listen to the radio and beat the spoons and beat the knife and the fork and drive my parents crazy. So one day they decided to get me a little tiny drum set. It was not professional, a very little tiny thing. Snare drum, a bass drum, and a cymbal. And I would put the bass drum up against the radio in the living room and play along with the band. What I played along was with Ozzie Nelson, and it was called the Clico Club Eskimos. That was the name of the band, with Harriet Hilliard, his wife, and they went on to have a TV show for a long time. And that was something to play along too, and I think that inherently got me into the feel of the music, playing with someone. And I did that for a long time. My first experience with a real professional drummer was at a time when I was 12 years old. My father knew I loved the drums and the music and everything. He took me to the Earl Theater in Philadelphia to see Chick Webb, who was a big-time band leader at that time. So I went in, the curtains opened in this gigantic theater, and I'm looking and looking for the drummer. All I saw was this huge bass drum and cymbals. And then I looked closer, there was his head sitting right behind the bass drum, and the cymbals hanging over, and these arms flailing and playing the greatest drums I ever heard in my life up to that point. And what I didn't know was Chick was a hunchback. He was about 4'11", 4'10". And he played the most fantastic musical drums. First time I'd ever heard that. And the singer of the band was Ella Fitzgerald, who at that time was 15. And lo and behold, 40 years later, I became her drummer and toured all over the world with Ella Fitzgerald. So what goes around comes around. It was quite an experience to see those two. I'm a very lucky man, really lucky. My first job as a drummer, professional job, at the age of 16 was with Dizzy Gillespie. Now, how lucky can a guy get? A white kid out of Philadelphia, no experience, but I had it all in here. It was all there, built in. No drum lessons, didn't have any drums. It was all built in. I heard it, I could do it. And I went up to Downbeat Club to hear this fantastic trumpeter and the little group that he had up there. And it was a revelation to hear them. It was really, he sounded like Roy Eldridge, but he was taking a left-hand turn. You could hear it. He would run through the changes a little bit different. And I stayed all night, and he came back. As he came off the stand, he started talking to me. And I said, well, I'm a drummer too, you know, cocky little kid. He said, you're a drummer? Well, come on up and play a little bit, which I did. And he liked it.
I mean, Diz was cool. He had these horn-rimmed glasses, and he had this knit bebop hat.
Now, you talk about luck. No experience, but I had the sound. Somehow it was built in. And he hired me to play with his band at the Downbeat Club in Philadelphia. Talk about luck. But I had the ability to do it. And he knew that, and I'll never forget him for that. He really launched me.
I didn't know he was such a great friend of Dizzy Gillespie, but he must have been because of being asked to play in the famous band that he took. It was an amazing band that he played in.
When he came into the jazz world as a young person at the same time that jazz was transforming and entirely new kind of jazz was beginning to come onto the scene, Stan was very fortunate, or maybe very aggressive or arrogant or whatever, that he got himself onto the scene and began to play at the beginning with the very heart of this new music. Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie. It doesn't get any more central than that. But he did. And so he came to it without any preconceptions about what jazz should or shouldn't be, and had the great good fortune to experience this music as it was being born.
At the same time I was in Philadelphia playing at the Downbeat Club, Benny Goodman was at the Earl Theater, and Zoot Sims, who was in the band, used to come and play with us at night. And he liked the way I play, and he told Benny about it, and Benny arranged an audition with the band. And I called my mother and said, Mom, I'm going to be with Benny Goodman at the Earl Theater. She said, shut up. Don't tell me stories like that. I don't want to hear it. I said, Mom, I'm going to be with Benny Goodman 9 o'clock in the morning. Just forget it. Just leave me alone. Leave me alone. So, okay, so the next morning I'm there. I've never been with a big band. I've never been on a stage. I never really had a real set of drums. And there I am with the #1 band in the country. #1, Benny Goodman at that time. Talk about nerve. But I knew his music in my head. I knew it. I knew the records. I knew the feeling of it. Was able to do it. So the curtains opens, and I'm looking at this thing, a cavernous theater. It's enormous with the red and blue lights. And my God, where am I? And I look down the first row. There's my mother. Her mouth is like 3 feet open. She couldn't believe it, you know. So we got through the show. And Benny is a very weird duck, was a weird duck. He would introduce everybody but me. So my mother pipes up, hey, Benny, who's the drummer? You know? And I says, oh my God, that's her. So that was my first experience. And I did go on the road for a short time with him, and he liked me. But he never spoke to me, never spoke. When they fired me, his brother Irving Goodman came over and said, Benny says you should go home. And that was the end of it. And then after about, I'd say 8 or 10 weeks, Dizzy told me he's going to leave. He's going to New York. And I felt terrible. I felt abandoned, you know. And he did go, and he says, will you come to New York? We'll help you get started in New York. Of course, a kid, I was scared to death, the big city. So we hugged each other goodbye, and he went to New York. And I continued playing. Some of the guys in Philly were John Coltrane, Philly Joe Jones, a bunch of good players, Buddy DeFranco, all good people out of Philly. So I started to think about what Dizzy told me, and there was a trumpet player by the name of Carl Warwick. They call him Bama. Very light-skinned black guy, great guy, great guy. And he encouraged me to go to New York. He said, come over, I will help you, and Dizzy will help you. And as scared as I was, I made the move. I had about $1.47, you know, and a train ticket. And I went over there and found Dizzy, and he took me right over to Oscar Pettiford, who was at that time one of the greatest bass players, you know, around. And he said, here's your drummer, to Oscar. And Oscar loved Dizzy. He says, okay, let's go. So my second night in New York, we got on a train and went to Boston to the TikTok Club. I says, what happened to New York? I was here and I'm gone. But that was another experience, another piece of luck that I fell into. Again, I was able to do this work.
To hold down the drum chair with Dizzy and Parker and the various people in New York City is something else.
My first job in New York was with Barney Bigard, who was an old style player with Duke Ellington, Dixieland more or less, but it was a job on 52nd Street. I grabbed it. It was wonderful. And actually they liked me, even though I was considered a modernist at that time. I played looser than they did, and got along with them very, very well. And Barney's a great guy, wonderful guy, and he put up with me, you know, whatever. And that was a very, very good learning experience. And then I got a call from Leonard Feather, the English critic, who was well known. And he recognized me as a good drummer, a new guy, a young kid. And he called me to do a record date. And wow, my first record date, first call. I said, sure, just tell me where and when. And I borrowed a set of drums. I went up to the Raymond Scott Studios on 52nd Street near 6th Avenue, New York. Got up there, got off the elevator, carrying the drums, went into the studio, and I stopped cold in my tracks. I was there on the piano, sitting there, playing, was Art Tatum, who was the king of kings of the piano. There was none better. There still is today, none better than that. I did a 180, completely turned around. I started to walk out. And Leonard Feather caught me at the elevator. He says, "Where are you going? You got to play. You're on this date." He says, "I cannot play with Art Tatum. I mean, I wouldn't even think of it." He says, "Way above my ability." He says, "Get back in there. You can do it. Everything will be fine." And I went back and I set up and I played very carefully. It was George Yall on the band, Joe Thomas. Let me see, the guitar player was Chuck Wayne, guys like that. It was kind of a mishmash of a band. And Art Tatum, who was above everybody in the band. And I played very softly and tried to just fit in. After the date, Art came over. He was blind. He couldn't really see. He could see a little bit out of the side of his eye. And he put his arm around me because he knew I was nervous as hell, you know. And he says, "You did real, real good. And you're going to be fine." And boy, did that help me for the ongoing career that I had. He saw that fear that I had, and he really made me feel good. And I'll never forget him for that. Great guy.
I'd heard Art Tatum, actually before I came to New York. Art Tatum used to play Buffalo, New York rather regularly at a place called McVan's on the other side of town. I was working at a place called the Anchor Bar right on Main Street in Buffalo. Art Tatum would come to town, and whenever we'd finish our evening at the Anchor Bar, I was working with a small trio, and we'd go over to hear Art's last set at McVan's, and it was always like a really amazing experience. You know. You have to struggle for words to describe Art's playing. He was in a class by himself. Technically, innovatively, his ideas, his stamina, his speed, accuracy with both hands, just a phenomenon. And nothing you could say about him really aptly describes his great ability, his great talent.
After we closed the Onyx Club, which was about 4 weeks, I walked down the street toward Fifth Avenue, and there's a club called Tondaleo. It wasn't really a jazz club, but I walked by and I heard this fabulous piano player, just really swinging like crazy. And I walk in, it's a little guy sitting on a telephone booth, you know, telephone book, excuse me, to get him a little higher into the piano. And I'm listening, he sounded like a whole orchestra. It was unbelievable the way he played. After he came off, I introduced myself to him, and he's Earl Gardner, who had just arrived in New York from Pittsburgh. And this guy could really play, and he always could play to the very end. And he was looking for a drummer. So he hired Jimmy Butts on bass and myself on drums.
I had an interesting experience. I was riding down on the subway one day with Earl Garner, who was also working on 52nd Street. And we'd started talking. I asked him the usual silly questions about how do you play the way you play and all that. And he told me, he said, Hank says, you know, he said, I learned one thing. It took me 20 years to learn what to leave out. And I thought that was a very profound statement. You know? So you don't have to play all the notes that are possible. There are millions of notes, but you don't have to play every one. Basie proved that, of course.
All this time I was on 52nd Street, working up and down, I'd hear people saying, "The bird is coming." I'm saying, the bird is coming? What bird? A sparrow, a robin, a pigeon? What bird? Charlie Parker.
I went to California in 1945. We were busy after I broke up my band, the first band I had. And I came back again to New York in 47, the early part of 47. And that's when I decided to have a band of my own permanently. And Miles was in my original band. I had Miles, I had Max, I had Tommy Potter, and Al Haig in my band. Mm-hmm. Another band I had Stan Levy, I had Curly Russell, I had Miles, and George Wellington.
The big night came about 2 weeks later, and Charlie Parker was here. Well, he looked like he just rolled off a garbage truck. There was something so bad in my life. His shoes didn't match. Looks like he slept in a suit for about a month, and his hair standing straight up. Looked like Don King. And there he was. I said, my God, what is this guy? What can he do? How good is he? He's like a legend already. And on Monday nights in the Downbeat Club on 52nd Street, they had an open jam session. And him and I walked in. I met him. We kind of talked for a while. And we walked into the Downbeat Club. And he took out his horn, which was in a paper bag full of rubber bands and cellophane to keep it together, and sat in. Well, within 4 bars, everybody went absolutely crazy because he was then the Charlie Parker that he is now. He was already so far advanced of everybody. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. So he gave me a little motion like that because the drummer was a older type drummer, you know. He said, come on up and play, give me the eye. And I did, the guy let me play. And as soon as we played like 8 bars together, we were like this. We knew we were musically bonded. It was the weirdest experience I ever had. I had that with Dizzy, but I really had it with Parker. And amazing experience, out of body experience. We used to play all night on 52nd Street. We'd have a job here, a job there. And then we go up to Minton's and start playing about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning and play till 2. Then knock it off, try to get some rest. And we became very fast friends. In fact, we moved in together in Harlem, around 121st Street. We got a place together. And it was a madhouse because we were going all night, all day. It was all music, you know. And the best time I ever had musically with him.
There was nothing to do but play, you know, and we had a lot of fun trying to play, you know. I did. Plenty of jam sessions. Met much late hours. Pretty good food. Just nice, clean living, you know. But basically speaking, much poverty.
Well, living with Charlie Parker, as I did, was like living in the eye of a hurricane. It never stopped. Just faster and faster and more playing. Of course, there was a lot of drugs involved in those days. Everybody did that. And we did it too, and a little bit to excess, I would say. But we had our share. But the music that we played was just beyond belief. It was all new, all wonderful. And we had the best time doing it. And we didn't make much money, but we had a lot of good times, a lot of good music.
I think one of the first times I heard Charlie Parker was when I was in the Army. I came home on furlough, and the guy I grew up called Tiny Khan took me to hear Charlie Parker. And I heard him a few times. I was on furlough. I heard him with Max Roach, and I heard him with Stan Levy. And what I do remember, I'll never forget with Stan, because I didn't know him in those days, whatever tune they were playing, sometimes Charlie Parker would play 30 choruses, and then Dizzy would play 30 choruses, then Al Haig would play 30 choruses, and Stan would be sitting there playing, am I doing the left hand? Yeah. He'd be yelling, take it out, take it out.
Dizzy came by one night, I think at the time he was working with Cab Calloway's band. And he sat in the band, and I was quite fascinated with the fellow. And we became very good friends, and until this day we are, you know? But that was the first time I ever had the pleasure to meet Dizzy Gillespie.
Well, was he playing the same way then, before he played with you?
I don't remember precisely. I just know that he was playing what you might call in the vernacular of the streets, a buku of horn, you know?
Buku?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, just like all of the horn packed up in once, you know? And we used to go around different places and jam together. We had quite a bit of fun in those days.
The music has different stages of development. There was King Oliver on the trumpet, and then after that there came Louis Armstrong on the trumpet, and it was a little different, but he sounded very close to King Oliver. And then there came Roy Eldridge, who he played a lot of the style of Louis Armstrong, remember that? And then I came along, and then there was Miles and Fats Navarro, came 2 of them. But they were trying to play like me. You know, so all of us got our. I tried to play like Roy Eldridge. Everybody's got their hero, you know. Before we came along playing the music, a guy either played legato or staccato. Or staccato. See, but we do the way that we play. We play them all together. You see, if you will notice, some of the notes I'm attacking and some I'm slurring.
But I heard Dizzy, Art Blakey, Bird, Lucky Thompson, Sarah, Gene Ammons. I heard all of them at once. I said, that's the most fun I ever had with my clothes on. I said, God damn, can you imagine that? Now I'm 15. But see, we were on the verge of that anyway. I knew they were playing, but I mean, it wasn't Dizzy first, it was the whole thing together, like, bam, here's what you want to be, you know? And my head just carried me right to Bird and Dizzy.
In the same building that Miles and I lived in, right below us was Billie Holiday. On the same floor was Sarah Vaughan. A whole bunch of guys, Freddie Webster, a fine trumpet player. So it was kind of a musical enclave, and it was really fun. We all got along beautifully, and there was some good music that came out of that.
We didn't have much money, so I would tell Irene, I'd say, now fix some cornbread, and we'd buy some cabbage, put potatoes in, you know, like cabbage. Bird come downstairs, right? Now the cornbread is this big, right? And we don't have no money, just a little bit of it, right? So I said, Bird, you want something to eat? He come in, now cornbread is like this, right? You cut this half, yeah, and eat the rest. He just took everything to the extreme. That's the reason he was like he is, what he is.
I remember you, man, seeing Stan Levy's name all with Bird and all of that. You guys were like the old, the first team, man. I mean, we were little greenback punks coming in from Seattle, you know, just glad to get to New York to be able to watch everybody do their thing, because we just heard stories. Because people forget back in that day, there was no MTV or anything to tell anybody what was going on. There was probably one jazz station in Seattle we could catch was Jimmy Lyons from San Francisco, and the Downbeat magazine. But I finally got to New York, and word of mouth, we'd hear things, and I finally got to New York. Oscar Pettiford took me there the first time to do two arrangements, and he took me to all the joints, and one of the joints where you were at Minton's, which was the Mecca. That's where everything was happening. And I used to see you guys go through the New York rituals, man. Like they'd have 20 guys sitting around with horns and sacks and all kind of stuff, paper sacks. And Bird was called them demons. And so they all jump up on the stand and will say they played with Bird. And as he's kicking off, he said, "Be natural." In the key of Be Natural. And you guys were flying along, and the stage emptied quick, because that's a half step up from what everybody ever knew how to play it.
I remember working with one of the finest drummers, perhaps the finest drummer in New York. And I'm sure if he was here, he would agree with me, Stan Levey. He was working with a group, the Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker group, at a club in New York called Clark Monroe's Spotlight on 52nd Street, sometimes known as Spring Street. Because on either side of the street for a block and perhaps a block and a half, there were clubs on both sides of the street. You could walk in one right across the street, walk in the other, back and forth all night, you know. But Stan was working with the group, and I was lucky enough to be included in that group for a short time.
I remember getting the first few Dial record company records that I ever had. Charlie Parker was playing on them. Wardell Gray and Dexter Gordon were playing some two-tenor things. When I heard Charlie Parker play, I said, what the hell is that going on? My goodness. So inventive. I mean, he was coming out of left field and didn't sound like anybody. He didn't sound like he was influenced by anybody. I'm sure he was, but you couldn't tell it from the notes that were coming out.
During our engagement on 52nd Street with Dizzy and Charlie Parker, a young fella used to come around every night and copy down chords and listening and listening and listening and listening. He was a young trumpet player by the name of Miles Davis, who later became an icon. And every night he got a little more aggressive, as far as talking to us and coming back. And one night he came back to the dressing room and he came up to Dizzy. He said, Dizzy, I can play anything you can play. And Dizzy said, yeah, but an octave lower.
My influence mostly was Dizzy. But also first it was Clark Terry.
St. Louis trumpet player.
Yeah. St. Louis is a place when the big bands used to come in town and up from New Orleans on the boat. And if the big bands, when they needed a trumpet player, they would stop in St. Louis. And I was 15 when I was playing professional. I had a union card when I was 15. But it was mostly Bruz, Eddie Random, Clark Terry, Levy. That was it. And another guy named Cliff King. But that's it. When the big band needed a trumpet player or a show drummer, you know, they would come just when they stopped in St. Louis, they would pick up a trumpet player. So they wanted me, but I couldn't go anywhere.
Across the street from the Downbeat Club where Parker and I were playing on Mondays and Tuesdays or whatever, there was a tenor player by the name of Ben Webster. I'm sure you'll heard of him. He was Duke Ellington's player, and he played Cottontail, a great player of that era. And he heard that we were over there. We were the latest thing, so he wanted to have us in the band, which he did. He hired us. And the first night went pretty well, and the second night, Ben likes to drink, and he got a little stoned, you know. And he called Cottontail, and it's a pretty fast tune, and he couldn't play it, you know. And Parker just took over and played the whole thing perfectly, you know, his solo. So he got a little peed off on that one, and he started looking at his phone. He's a gigantic guy, Ben Webster, strong, big guy. And he said, he turned around, he said, you two get the hell out of here. And we were fired the second night.
I've never been so enraptured or fascinated in my life as the days when the rules were being made and the guys were carving out the catechism of what the new music was all about. Because it was music that took over and it revolutionized the music in the world.
When you talk about bebop music, and we know it came out of the African American or black musical context, but even more importantly than that is that jazz was stale for a minute. Musicians were rebelling against the form that was prior to bebop. So what happens is that due again to the creativity involved in jazz music, to the evolving processes of jazz music, things take place. And these great musicians found ways in time and tempo to create new music. Music unheard of at the time. You look back on it and you say, well, I can do that. But in the 1940s and late 1930s, this was new music. The music was so new that people didn't understand it. It took about a decade or two that people really understood what bebop was.
At that time, it wasn't terribly popular with most people, as a matter of fact. Stan would probably verify that, because a lot of people, including some musicians, rejected the style, maybe because it was too different, and you know, people hate to change. There's sort of a built-in resistance to people for change, even if it's good. And if it's particularly difficult to do, there's more resistance. I think that might have been the problem. But eventually it did catch on. That's the type of music that we call bebop.
You know, if you see transcribed pages of bebop solos, the ink is so, there's so much ink there, you can't even see the white paper. It takes a person, if you can play, that's what counts for me. Of course, then you have to have the talent and the sentimentality or whatever the other emotions are. But the main thing is you got to know your acts.
Bebop was much more than just the music, you know. It was a way of speaking, the colloquialisms. It was a sensibility. There was the slangs that were like opposites. I remember saying one night at Newport or something, I said, how was so-and-so? I said, oh, man, he was terrible, man, which meant great. And this man's wife was telling me, so, oh, man, did you, Quincy was talking bad about you. I said, he's bad, you know. That's, at that time, it was, the opposites were, you know, that was the colorful slang then.
About a month down the line, after we got through playing these little clubs with Parker and such, Dizzy called, and he said, we're going to do a band with Charlie Parker, me, Stan Levy, me, and Curly Russell and Al Haig. And wow, I said, this can't be real. This is earth-shaking, and it was. And we started rehearsing in the Three Deuces in the afternoon. And Dizzy brought in all this music, you know, Confirmation, Bebop, all the tunes that he did. And Al Haig was incredible. And the band immediately gelled. Within 30 minutes, it was together. It was a done deal. It was a perfect package. We rehearsed maybe 2 or 3 days, and then we opened in the Three Deuces, and everything broke loose. Chaotic. People couldn't get in the door. It just went crazy for about 8 weeks, the whole time we were there. The last 2 weeks of the engagement with Dizzy and Charlie Parker in New York, I got a call from Woody Herman's manager. Now, Woody Herman at that time was the #1 band in the country, in the world. Tremendous. And he offered me $250 a week, which at that time was an unbelievable amount of money. And I went to Dizzy and said, man, what should I do? This guy's going to offer me $250, and I'm making $66 a week with Dizzy. And the kind of guy Dizzy is, he just says, just go and take it. When you come back, your job will be here. And I went to play with this #1 big band in the world, and I couldn't read music, and I didn't have any drums. So I played on Davy Tuff's set, and I got by pretty well. They liked me pretty good. I was out about 2 months with the band. Davy had gotten sick. And when I came back, Dizzy had done the record dates that I wanted to do. Salt Peanuts, that whole group for Musicraft, which I missed. Big Sid Catlett did them and did a great job, a fantastic job. And I was really sorry I missed those. I should have been on that. But that's the kind of guy Dizzy was. Go get the money. Go get it.
I think that both he and Max Roach obviously had a powerful impact. Max Roach certainly much better known at that time than Stan was, but if you listen to Stan's playing from that period, there was a lot of similarity between those two players. The other thing that comes to mind about that aspect of his career is that he was playing, and again, I think had the good fortune to be part of a scene at a time when a lot of the racial problems that began to emerge later were not as present as they have since become, so that as a white player, as a young white drummer, he was able to play with African Americans, and everybody loved everybody. And as he has said, with Dizzy, it was a matter of whether you could cut the music or not. If you could play it, then you deserved to be there. If you didn't, then you didn't. And that was a great experience for a young drummer to have. Things changed later, of course, but at that time, I can't think of a better opportunity than to have been able to grow up as a young musician playing with Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie. That's magical.
When you talk about whites playing with blacks, it's really not that important. What really is important is the music and how well they played the music, and that's the key. And in this case, you had Stan Levy playing with the pioneers, Bird, Diz, Miles, and he was right there. Why was Stan there? Well, simply put, Stan was an outstanding drummer. He knew the pace of the music. He knew the feeling of bebop. And this had a lot to do with that whole concept. It wasn't so much a racial thing unless people made it a racial thing. But white musicians were playing with black musicians, a long time, still do.
I'd like to tell you about my first trip to California. Dizzy called me after we had done all this work in New York and everything, and he says, we're going to California. We got an 8-week job there, and it should be very interesting. It's nice out there. The weather is good, and so we're ready to go. And I said, well, we're going to have the same band. He says, yeah, except we're not taking Curly Russell. Now, Curly Russell is the bass player, and we had worked together for a long time. And we traded off carrying the band. In other words, the ferocious tempos that we played. In some cases, he would take over a little bit, then I would relieve him a bit, you know, as far as putting the edge on the music, on the rhythm. So he says, no, Curly's not going. I said, why? He said, I'm hiring a young guy by the name of Ray Brown. I says, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I had no idea who he was or what he was or anything. I said, Dizzy, why are you taking apart the rhythm section that we had that worked so well? He says, I found this kid in Detroit and he's fantastic. I said, well, it's your band. Do what you want. And I worried about that for a while. And then the band we took out was Charlie Parker, Stan Levey, Ray Brown, Milt Jackson, Dizzy Gillespie, and we got on the train. And the train ride was a disaster because in those days, you had to go to Chicago first, and then you laid over for a couple of hours, and then that was the 20th Century Limited, and then you took the train to California. And I met this young guy, a pretty cocky guy, this Ray Brown. I didn't know how he played. And Milt Jackson, I knew nothing about him at all. And we're on the train, and we stopped for water. In those days, they had a water stop where there was a steam engine, and we had to get water. And we're stopping, and the train is hissing and all the noise it makes. And I look out the window. I see this little speck out there with a little suitcase. I'm saying, man, it's a desert. What is this guy doing out there? I looked real close, and it was Charlie Parker, walking in the desert. And I said to Dizzy, I think you better look at this. And he looked out there, and he says, what is it? And I said, I think it's your saxophone player, Charlie Parker. He said, well, you better go get him. I said, wait a minute, it's your band. He said, no, you go get him. You're his friend. And I ran out. It was about maybe 200 yards out there. He was staggering around. He was ill. He didn't have his medicine or whatever. And let him know that there's nothing out there he can get. Nothing's going to help him. So I got him back on the train, and he was a mess all the way back. And we finally pulled into Union Station, and he was like a zombie, you know, really sick. And that was our first trip to California, L.A., and I was still worrying about the bass player because it was quite important, you know, the ferocious, speedy tempos that we played. And they also added Lucky Thompson on tenor in case Parker didn't come in on time, which he very seldom did. And the first night, Dizzy beats off a real fast tune.
Billy Burries. It was a hell of an experience, but we upset California, the music lovers in California. We were there for 8 weeks, and I went away, and we came back, and I came back with a big band and played there. And that was a profound experience there because a lot of the movie stars came out, such as Ava Gardner. You know.
Dizzy beat off the first tune of the night at a ferocious tempo, really fast. And we got right into it, and it was flying. And I hear this great bass sound coming through, which I'd never heard before. Every note clear as a bell, and the tempos are right there. And boy, I just looked at that kid and just grinned. He grinned over at me, and he was what he became later, Ray Brown. Great bass player. So we had Al Haig on piano, Ray Brown, and myself. That was a pretty good rhythm section.
They say that they weren't very well received, but I think they were because they were, I mean, it was a very underground thing. I think New York was a few years ahead of Los Angeles in that particular thing.
We did good business there because they had never heard this type of music, bebop or whatever you want to call it. They always had like Slim and Slam comedy acts and stuff like that. Harry the Hipster, you know. And we had all the movie stars come in every night, every night. Jennifer Jones, all these kind of Ava Gardner, every night in there. Peter Lawford. And when we first started, when we first got there, Billy Berg says, well, who's the singer? Well, we didn't have a singer. But the only thing we sang was Salt Peanuts, where Dizzy sang Salt Peanuts, Salt Peanuts. And that was about it. So Billy Berg had bought a band that he didn't know about. He didn't know the style of it. But we did a pretty good business. All the musicians came. Quite a good experience. Also, we, through the 8 weeks that we were there, Charlie Parker was going downhill, downhill, downhill. He couldn't get the right drugs that he needed to keep him going. And he just started drinking heavier and eating heavier, and he was a mess. Finally, the job was over after the 8 weeks, and Dizzy gave me all the plane tickets. We came back by plane this time. 21 stops, up and down, up and down. It took about 20 hours to come back by plane in those days. That was 1945. And I couldn't find Charlie Parker. I went to the hotel, he wasn't there. I went out, took a cab, someone had about $20, $30. In those days, that was a lot of money for a cab. Could not find him anywhere. So I left the ticket at the hotel, at the desk for him. He never got it. He never showed up. He never got on a plane. We just left and went back to New York, and he got in big trouble here. He wound up getting arrested, setting fire to his room, drunk, and wound up in the Camarillo for about a year. They got him pretty well straightened out. And the next time I saw him was about a year or so later. In New York, he had bloated up, he was real, real heavy, and a very subdued Charlie Parker. One of the jobs I had was with Billie Holiday. I was her drummer, and she was really something at that time. The clubs along 52nd Street were very, very noisy, a lot of noise and carrying on. And when she appeared, the room would go dark, and there'd be a little pin spot, and she would walk into that pin spot, and boy, the silence was deafening when she walked on stage. She was really a fantastic person. She had a great aura about her and control without even opening her mouth. It just controlled the whole room. And she was quite a character and quite a nice girl, actually. Had a tough life, very tough.
She was right there with this sound that no one else had. There was no one who sang like Billie Holiday. No one. She was that important. She had that much emotion that left people in tears. People just said, why is she so sad? But she was emotional in terms of the vocal context of the song.
We all had a dressing room upstairs with Coleman Hawkins and Billy. And my first night with the band, I saw this white powder on a mirror, and they're all sniffing it up. And I found out what that was. That was pretty interesting for a young guy to see that stuff. And it was quite an experience on 52nd Street, especially with Coleman Hawkins. He had a great band, terrific band. And Billy was great to me, and we got along quite well. In the literary department, there are many, many books out on top icon musicians, really top men. I am very fortunate to be in those books as a part of them, with Dizzy, Charlie Parker's book, Miles Davis' book, Coleman Hawkins, etc., etc. And it's makes me feel very good to be included in those as a good friend and as a favored player. They use me as a player. They all like me. And it's just good to look back on that and read those books. Some of my favorite drummers are Max Roach, Philly Joe Jones, Roy Haynes, Don Lamont, Dave Tuff, Big Sid Catlett, people like that. These guys were really polished drummers. They knew how to work the drum set, and they had good ears. They listened to the music, and that's the main thing. Listening to and absorbing the music and becoming a part of it. Shelly Manne was very good at that, a whole bunch of guys, and we miss them all.
It's surrealistic. You can't believe that the people that have inspired you all your life since you're that high, and then you use them, they're your role models and your idols and everything else, then you get to be to work with them, you become friendly with them, and you create with them, and it's like they can never go away. Basie was like that. Basie, I met Basie when I was 13 years old, and Clark Terry, who taught me how to put my trumpet to my mouth, you know. It's time is no joke. It's an amazing phenomenon.
Duke Ellington said it's only two kinds of music, good or bad. And bebop was good music. It was new music, and it was being brought by people that I don't think they were well known at the time, but they were sensational.
Ever since I've ever heard music, I thought it should be very clean, very precise, as clean as possible anyway, you know, and more or less to the people, you know, something they could understand, something that was beautiful, you know. Because definitely there's stories and stories and stories that can be told in the musical idiom, you know. You wouldn't say idiom either. It's so hard to describe music other than the basic way to describe it. Music is basically melody, harmony, and rhythm. But, I mean, people can do much more with music than that. It can be very descriptive in all kinds of ways, you know, all walks of life.
I guess we all have a tendency to take it for granted that all the people, all of you, are while we're all walking around on this earth together, you take the existence for granted. And then when they're no longer here, one great thing about music is that the chemical energy goes away, but the sound and the soul and the spirit holds on forever. And we were fortunate, I think very, very fortunate, that the time that we happened to be born and came up, even 10 years either way, we were some of the luckiest people alive because we got a chance to not only participate in some of the best music that was ever made, but also to hear some of the best music ever made. And we take it for granted when all these giants are around, the Byrds and Lesters and Basie and Ella and Sarah and Duke and Dizzy and everybody. It's Miles. It's astounding, you know, when you look back and you see the whole, have a focus on the whole eras. It's just awesome. But I wouldn't trade this time that we came up than any other time, because that's when it was happening. Songwriters, musicians, and everything else, and the bands, that's what was happening.
The kind of drumming that Stan did, that Max did, was drumming in which drummers listened to what the other players were doing, in which they were musicians, they were not soloists, at least not all the time. Drummers today tend to, and I hate to generalize about this, but there's a tendency among many young drummers to not really listen to what other players are doing, to not take the responsibility for filling out the textures, for supporting a solo, for energizing the swing, to hear the sensitivity to hear what a soloist is doing and stay with him as he's going on a kind of a course and his momentum is being established and the drummer takes it along. That's very subtle stuff. And it takes musicality, it takes intelligence, and it takes a certain kind of self-effacing quality that certainly was true with Stan, with Max Roach, with all of the drummers from that era.
When I talk about people like Stan Levy and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, you know, I wax eloquent because these were elegant people, and you know, it's just a pleasure just to remember the great experiences I had working with these guys.
Right, well, thank you. That was The Life and Times of Stan Levy. I hope you enjoyed it. I should just perhaps add that Stan Levy died in April 2005 at the age of 79.